Hey everyone, welcome back to God Stories. This is the 9th episode. I'm actually really excited about this episode because this will be one of the first times I've ever met this guest. So if you please welcome Caleb Zink to the channel. What's going on,
Thanks
buddy?
for having me.
Of course, man. So this is a bit new for me because I have no idea who you are. And this is great because I just met you through a mutual friend. So if you could just tell the people just who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Caleb Zink. I'm 21 years old. This last year, I ended up joining an organization called Overland Missions to be a full-time missionary overseas.
Sweet, man. All right. So if you could just tell us what life was like before you committed yourself to Jesus.
Yeah, so life before me. Well, not before me. Can we cut that out?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
That's fine.
cool.
We'll just stay here. I'll re-ask the first
Okay.
question. All right. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your life before you committed yourself to Jesus.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back a good ways back. In first grade, I was super shy, super introverted. I kind of suffered from a lot of self-hatred, didn't really know what my identity was, nor was I really a Christian at the time. I also suffered from a lot of anxiety, suicidal thoughts, depression. Most of it was self-inflicted because I just didn't know who I was, and I saw myself as not worthy. And at the time, I didn't really understand why I was going through these different difficulties, like having no friends, not wanting to talk to anyone, just having like these panic attacks of anxiety for no reason. And kind of going through that from first grade all the way up until 5th grade, I had no friends. I was just constantly suffering. That entire time looking back was a complete blank in my head. It was kind of tough. And kind of like going into my 6th grade year, it's kind of funny. My first friend I didn't realize at the time was actually my cousin. Through marriage, we found out later, but his name was Jonah. We were really close friends, and he was kind of one of the first people that actually cared about me at school. And kind of just from his passion that he had for me, his family was a really good Christian family. He was just constantly kind of pursuing a friendship with me. He's been one of my longest friends in life so far. And going from like that time of just not knowing who I was, still in middle school, I still was trying to figure out who I was. I started hanging out with him, started hanging out with some other people, but it wasn't probably the greatest crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going from that led me into, because I didn't know who I was trying to figure that out. And I was not seeking the Lord in any of it. I got into pornography, I got into drinking, I got into smoking, a lot of things that just really consumed my life and just gave me more anxiety, more depression. I hid more stuff from my parents, which just pushed me away. Even though they truly loved me, I just didn't want to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of later on, that kind of translated into my relationship with God. Like, I didn't want to accept His love. I didn't see myself as worthy, even though I know He paid the price for me on the cross. I grew up in a Christian school, so I knew like who He was. I knew the stories. I just didn't want to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
It felt too painful to really think about the things I've done in my life or the things that have consumed me and try to get rid of it, because that's all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like as if I was tearing a part of me away, even though it wasn't really myself. It was just full of sin and hatred. And kind of leading into high school, I was still kind of carrying these on. I was trying to pursue the Lord because I knew that I had peace every time I was, but there's still so much hatred towards myself and towards just really my identity.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, everyone's pursuing the Lord, my family's pursuing the Lord, everyone has like these great lives. I was like, I'm trying to do the same thing, but I can never really figure out what it was that was missing. Even though I was like, God's right there, I'm pursuing Him, but I still held on to all this sin.
Yeah.
And because of that kind of is the reason why I never really had a deep relationship with God. I was pursuing Him, but I was also pursuing the things of this world, and can't do both.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of leading into high school, I went to this camp. I think this was my 3rd or 4th camp I've ever been to before. But I just knew it was going away from my parents for about a week, spending some time with my friends, getting to hear about this God, who at the time I didn't really want to accept. I knew who He was. I was like, oh, cool. I thought it was just like another thing I did. Like how you go to a grocery store, you go to brush your teeth in the morning. Like, I just thought it was another activity that I did. I didn't realize the power and the goodness of God of who he was at the time.
Yeah.
And going to this camp, it was really great, but the entire time, looking back, it's so funny to me, just of like how much he was softening my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, I would always hear like, God knows like every hair on your head, he knows everything about you. I was like, okay, cool, and just kind of like brush it off my shoulder.
Yeah.
And kind of going from that into like this camp, he was softening my heart the entire time. Also up to this point, I have never cried in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Probably maybe I wasn't born I'd cried. So far, counting to like this day, I've cried more in this last year than I have in my entire life.
Nice.
And it's, in crying, it's like a lot of people look down upon it. Like even like back then, it was like trying to be like this independent person.
Mm-hmm.
Don't cry, don't show emotion. There's a lot of different things I was dealing with back then. And kind of going to like this camp, it kind of, with like the Lord kind of working on my heart a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's this guy that came up to me the last day. He didn't know me, I didn't know him.
Mm-hmm.
It was just some youth leader that, I think this was his first time also being a youth leader there at the time.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, super passionate dude. But he came up to me and he literally told me about all my anxiety, all my depression, all my suicidal thoughts. I've never shared this with anyone. Close friends, close family, like never. I've got really good at pushing stuff down inside of me and acting like everything's okay.
Yeah.
Although on the inside, it's like tearing me apart.
Mm-hmm.
But on the outside, it's just like, oh, Caleb, he's such a sweet person or something. But on the inside, it's like constant anxiety. A couple times I would like get in my car, drive on a bridge or something, be like, what if I just like took a quick turn real quick and just hopped off the bridge or something, or ran into a pole or something.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that really stopped me from that was like, oh, my parents are gonna have to deal with that bill.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that really stopped me then. And thankfully, from the grace of God, His mercy, He saved me from that and steered me away from like those different obstacles in my life. But that camp really truly saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like seeing like, wow, He really cares about, He really knows every hair on my head. He knows everything about my life, who I am, like the things I would never tell someone. Like
Yeah.
He knows every single darkest secret. And then after that, you started prophesying like, you have a heart for the lost, you really do these things. I was 16 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what He meant. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this guy's cool. He knows everything about me, but like, I don't know what this means.
Yeah.
I kind of thought he was a little crazy at the time. I was like, it seems a little far-fetched for me, just because of where I was at the time. But, man, God is so good. But kind of going from that, I was going through high school. I was still hanging out with a lot of my friends who just weren't in a good community.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I had this new thing on my shoulder. Like, I don't really know how to explain it. It felt like I had more of like I need to think more about my actions, think more about what I do, because I'm now like seeing the effects of it around other people. So everything, I was also in a sense very self-minded, very selfish, but I never really thought I was. Because I love caring for people, it's just all my internal thoughts were all selfish.
Yeah.
Even though I love listening to people, loved helping people. And kind of once I got outside that, being like, oh wow, what, not like thinking like of how people judge me, but thinking of how my actions of drinking or doing all these dumb things like transfer on to my classmates. Because when you're in high school, the people you hang around is like the people you become like.
Yeah.
And during this time, I was like still somewhat going to the parties, but I wasn't drinking or anything. I was just still hanging out with them because I'm like, these are my friends, I care about them. But I was still like in this new phase of transitioning into, wow, it's actually God who cares about me, actually loves me. And it was more of a transition of trying to accept that for myself.
Yeah.
Because I hated myself for such a long time, I didn't want to accept my parents' love, I didn't want to accept my friends' love. Trying to accept a God's love who I've never visually seen before was hard. It's like, I know He's there, I feel it, but really allowing that to come into my heart, into my soul, I struggled with that for a long time.
Yeah.
It was not a short process. It wasn't like I went to camp, it was like an instant, like, yes, the Lord loves me, everything's great now. It took a couple years.
Yeah.
Trying to get rid of the old things in my life. Slowly, after a while, hanging out with my friends, I learned that even though I love them, I couldn't hang out with them anymore.
Yeah.
Because they were pursuing things of the world, and it just, in a sense, was like holding me back from more of like the Lord's love or like things He had in store for me.
Yeah.
And going into like my senior year, actually let me step back a little bit. Into my junior year of high school is when I really just started pursuing the Lord fully. My friends saw that and they just started not inviting me to things. I was like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I've had so much more peace about it. So much more love I felt in my life. Even though all my friends like weren't inviting me to things, I like if you look on it from like the outside, you'd be like, oh, he's probably such a lonely person.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. The Lord's love was there.
Yeah.
There's no real way to explain it, except for once you truly accept it. Like that accepting part is such a hard thing. It's like, oh, like I don't want to leave my friends. I don't want to leave this environment because like you don't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
It's an unknown. People are afraid of that. I was afraid of that, and I took a leap, and I've never looked back since.
Yeah.
And in 2021, a couple years ago, so this was like my junior year, like summertime, I went on a mission trip.
Nice.
First time on a plane, first time overseas, first time preaching the gospel to someone who's never heard it before. Sorry. And going over there, I was terrified. I knew I wasn't prepared. I knew that I didn't know the word well enough. I knew that my relationship like was not where in my mind I wanted to be to like do missions.
Yeah.
Like thinking back in the Bible of like Paul, like all these different people that are doing ministry, like they know the word well. They know Jesus well. Like they know who they are. Their identity is super strong. I was still trying to figure some of that out for myself. But I knew the Lord had called me to this. And going into this mission trip, there's no words really to explain except the Holy Spirit was completely over all of it.
Yeah.
Our truck, we got stuck in the sand a couple times. We had a lot of like different difficulties of just being over there, as well as within like the first 5 minutes of us setting up our camp, we had a boom slinger snake fall out of a tree, which is like one of the top 5 deadly snakes in the world, I'm pretty sure. It was great. And then one of our buddies who was with us helping to translate while we were over there, we call them ministry partners, because they help us do ministry as well. They have such a big heart for their nation as well, so I absolutely love them.
Yeah.
But he took a big old log, went over and just smashed it, because those things will kill you pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a bit of a side note.
That's fun.
But it's fun. But truly during that time, we reached over 1,000 people, which looking back, like, we only went to a couple houses every day, but our team was really big, so we broke up all the time, went to different villages, all the different houses. We'd probably spend one day, I probably only get to 1 or 2 households, like the entire day, from like 8 a.m. to like 7 p.m. Just their culture is so different from America. Like even like going on this mission trip of overseas, like learning more about my identity as well. Because like over here in America, it's like you have to be independent. Like as a man, you're not allowed to show emotion. You have to like present yourself in a certain way of like strong and mighty. But over there, it's very different as well. Because like, yes, you do have to be strong and mighty, and their emotion it shows well. But it's also they care more about the quality of time with people versus like the length of it. Like nowadays, you go to lunch with someone that's like, oh, you have a business meeting at like 1 o'clock and you get there at like 12. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I took so much of your time up for lunch. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye. Over there, it's like they will stay and talk with you for 5, 6, 7 hours just wanting to hear your story. Yeah. As well as we love to hear their story as well, and just like from interacting with them. And just really seeing like people like who have never heard the gospel before, like that in itself took me in shock.
Yeah.
Because over here in America, we're so blessed to be able to hear the gospel, hear who Jesus is. But over there, they don't have the opportunity. And from doing that and seeing different ministries, kind of set me on this path of just wanting to do ministry. As well as there's this one household we went to. I don't remember his name. He was 70 years old, and he couldn't see. He was born like not being able to see, not being able to walk super well, and we got to pray for him. Him and his family. We got to share the gospel with them, share who Jesus was. They got to get rid of their witchcraft things that they were dealing with during the time, and like fully surrender themselves to God. And we asked, do you want to be fully healed from this? And he was like, yes. And we prayed for him. He had complete restoration in his eyes again. He was able to see his wife, see his kids, see like what a tree looks like for the first time. Like imagine going, like I'm only 20 years old. At 50 plus years of never being able to see, and then you accept this God who you're hearing about for the first time and being able to see. Like his entire life was transformed in that moment. Not including his life, but his entire village.
Yeah.
Because he went to go share on this testimony of this God who completely healed his eyesight. And he tried to heal his eyesight with witchcraft and all like these different things, but it never worked.
Yeah.
And then Jesus does, because he is a healer of all things, and kind of from that has pursued me on a path towards missions full time.
Yeah.
But absolutely amazing just seeing goodness of God firsthand. And I cannot be where I am today without God pursuing me.
Yeah.
Because I was just running away for a long time from him. But yeah.
That's great, man. Well, you kind of answered the second question I was going to ask you about, how did God change your life, which, you answered that. So I'll just jump into the third question.
Yeah.
Would be, so since when you committed yourself to Jesus and, you saw that life change, how did going on these missions trips and being a missionary over these past couple of years, has Jesus changed your perspective on how you view other people, and in a sense of where you viewed yourself as kind of worthless, and you just felt depressed and you felt like you hated yourself. How did Jesus change your perspective on how you viewed yourself, but also how you would view other people who deal with that certain situation as well?
Yeah. So really the only thing that comes to mind in that is just love people like God loved us. Unconditionally. Like that love that he constantly pursues us with, it's unconditional. It's not like he can stop one day and be like, okay, I love you now, I don't love you tomorrow, maybe the next day after that. It's like consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And truly trying to live up to how he lived life.
Mm-hmm.
Of just pursuing people with love, and also having grace and mercy for them, because people will make mistakes, they may hurt you, but at the end of the day, if you look back to Jesus' story, how people denied who he was, and then he got sent to the cross. He could have been talked to his father and been like, hey, this guy did this to me, don't let him come to heaven or something.
Yeah.
But instead, he still shared love with them. He didn't say mean things about them, or he didn't judge them for the actions they made. He loved them for who they were.
Mm-hmm.
And truly, there's so many people in this world that are lost, that are trying to find themselves, or think they might know their identity,
Mm-hmm.
yet they have all this heartache and pain inside of them. And it's really just trying to go into it, showing hey, this is who God is. This is how I love people. This is how he loved people. This is fully free if you want it, and just really giving them the opportunity to.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the Lord, I can plant seeds in my life, not my life, but their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really as much as we can do, and then the Holy Spirit, it's completely up to them and their lives.
Yeah.
But I will give them the opportunity, show them who he is, show them my own life of the testimony of his goodness.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it answers that or
No,
not.
yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It was great. The last question I really have for you is, what's one piece of advice you could give people in a situation? I'll put in these two cases. One, where you were
Mm-hmm.
before you really committed yourself to Jesus, and how you thought about yourself, and then two, what's one piece of advice as someone who wants to maybe get into missions as well? So you can just answer that in 2 parts as well.
Yeah. So, let me back real quick. Probably with advice I'm going to go off identity, just because that was such a huge thing in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I was running away from God, I was running away from myself, running away from my parents for a long time, and because I thought no one loved me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, there's so many people out there that love you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just really sitting down and thinking about, is it that I'm not accepting people's love, or is it that I just hate myself?
Mm-hmm.
And learning to love yourself, because there's a God above all things that created you.
Mm-hmm.
He molded you, he knew who you were before you were even born. Just think about that for a moment. There's a God who created this earth, that cares about you, who constantly thinks about you, constantly loves you. And kind of like for a long time I was like, there's not really a God who like loves me like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there truly is. And even if you don't love him back, he's still going to continue to pursue you, continue to love you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people in this world that I would like, partially because of my identity problem, I would pursue certain friends and then they would like backstab me or do certain things. So I was like, oh, this is how the whole world is. That's how God is. Because we're made in like God's image. So this is probably how all of mankind is.
Yeah.
But that's a complete lie. God's love is nothing like this world, nothing like we can comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
And really just pursue him before anything else. Like, your friends will fail you, your family will fail you, God won't. Mm-hmm. And until I finally pursued the Lord before anything else, I was like stuck in this area of just hatred, self-doubt, anxiety. And probably my biggest thing is just pursue the Lord before all things. And even if like you're wanting a relationship or something, and you're like, Lord, I feel so lost, I'm doing all these things, but like I want a girlfriend or I want a wife or something, pursue the Lord first. Like, it might take years. Like, for me, like, I'm 21 years old, and it's taken me majority of my life to get where I am now. And it's not been an easy path. It's been a path of refinement, of pain. He's kind of like gold in a sense. I forgot the verse in the Bible where it talks about this. But like, to get gold to where it needs to be, you have to put it into a furnace, and you have to melt it down, you have to burn it, and it's a painful process for all of the impurities to float to the top. You scoop them out, and you have like this pure gold. Mm-hmm. Same thing in your life. Like, it's a refining process. It's going to burn. It is not going to feel well. Yeah. But once you get through that, it's so good after once you get through it. Yeah. In the moment you feel like, oh, I'm in the deep end, I can't get out, but there's a way. Mm-hmm. We don't know the time of the day because it's all the Lord's will. It's not ours, but it gets better. Yeah. And he has a path for you, and he loves you. And yeah.
And so the last part of that question was, what's one piece of advice you would give to somebody who's wanting to get into missions or feels called to missions?
Yeah. If you feel that burning sensation, even if you're terrified of like, I don't know if this is the right spot, maybe you just got saved, or maybe in the Lord for a while, but like you're not pursuing him as well as you want to. Like, I was in that spot my first mission trip. I was like, like I knew who God was, I knew the Bible, all the different things to say or do, but I was still very new to actually having a relationship with God. And I felt like a little burning sensation. If you feel that, don't question it, just do it. You won't regret it. You'll be over there, you'll be terrified, but you'll look back and you're like, oh wow, now I see what, like, in the moment you might not always see what the Lord's doing in your life. Like, looking back from 2021 to 2023, like those 2 years of time of finishing high school, starting college a little bit, that was time of preparation. Mm-hmm. Even though I was pursuing the Lord, I was a youth leader for a little bit, I still kind of felt lost. Just pursue the Lord first in all things, even if it's terrifying. And because you don't know what to expect. Because like when the Holy Spirit's with you, when God's with you, the unexplainable will happen. And the impossible will happen, because he is the God of impossibilities. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to be scared. You don't have to go in it with full confidence, because God will be there. Just trust him, and he will get you through it. And missions, there's nothing like it. Being able to share your love with someone who you've never met before, like who God is. There's so many missions opportunities here in the States, at colleges, overseas, and also doing ministry and like missions. And it's not just like, oh, I'm a missionary, I'm gonna go overseas. Like, that's the mission field. Your mission field is everywhere you go. It is your neighbor, it is your friend. Like, if you go out to eat somewhere and you're like, the Lord's pushing me towards this person, just go introduce yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, get to know them a little bit. Like the other day, I went on this trail up in Huntsville. I think it was called Green Mountain. Mm-hmm. One of my family members told me about it. I was like, and I'm just traveling through town right now on this fundraising trip to go overseas full time. And I went on this trail, and I was like, I felt like the Holy Spirit wanted me to keep going. I probably walked for 2 miles. I was like, I probably need to turn back to get my car before the sun goes down. But I was like, okay. But I felt like he told me like to keep going. So I went on this lookout point. And I was like, oh, there's such a pretty view. I saw this guy to my right. I just started talking with him and sharing my thoughts about Jesus with him, and it was a really good conversation. It's really as easy just being like, oh, hi, what's your name? Oh, cool, nice to meet you. And then just getting to learn life about them. Mm-hmm. It's not like you have to go in with like this 5-point sermon of like who Jesus is. It's just living life and sharing your love that he has for us, but sharing it with them.
Yeah, that's great, man.
But yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you.
It was great hearing about your testimony, just hearing about your life, just things that God's been doing. Yeah, I can tell the passion. I can tell the burden that God's put on your life for missions and people, just people all around. Not even just even overseas, but just people just in general. But thank you again for sharing your testimony. I know it's impacted me. I know it's given me a lot more perspective on how our cultures and other people's cultures, how they reflect and all that stuff. But I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope you guys got as much out of it as I did. Just make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to watch all of our previous videos, and we got some more videos coming for you guys as well. We'll see you guys on the next one.